Morning, guys. Hey, John. I want to make sure I got to send you one. It might be Warren, but I'll make sure to get you.
Well, I wouldn't be shocked if it was Warren, but Andrew, we spent a lot of sweaty training camps together.
Nice.
That sounds worse than it is, but many hot training camps in the South together, Steve, and it was always a pleasure.
Well, Steve, speaking of training camp, I kind of just had a realization right before we got to you that we have not talked about Saquon Barkley enough and the addition of Saquon Barkley. And I think part of it is we haven't seen him yet in an Eagles uniform on the field, and we also haven't, we have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert already, so it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. But the addition of Saquon Barkley, how much more dominant can this Eagles offense be?
It can be great because, to me, you have to pair him with the addition of Kellen Moore, right? And Kellen, we've seen the offenses that he's had in Dallas, what he did with the Chargers, but he's never had a chip like Saquon, so to speak, the versatile, running back, the guy who get the ball in his hands, punch it inside, hit the big home run, running the ball, catch the ball out in the flats, run with power and with shiftiness in the open field. So I think he's such a chess piece, and behind this offensive line, I mean, you've heard this narrative all along. This could be the greatest season that Saquon has had because he's never had pieces around this to make defensive coordinators adjust to other talent. He's never had an offensive line like this or a quarterback like this that's going to occupy a defender because you have to stay disciplined because the quarterback can move. So I just think this could be so significant, and having a player like this, not to diminish what some of the other running backs that they've had, but to have a play caller in combination with a running back like this, I think it'd make this offense even more dangerous.
Now, Steve, you're going to be shocked to hear this, but we can be a little negative here in Philadelphia at times. Our fan base.
Way.
Yeah, it's breaking news. You can use that tonight on the air, by the way. Just quote me. But it's shocking that there's a lot of people who are very sort of still skeptical that the Eagles will be able to rebound and will be able to overcome what last year was that big collapse. When you look at the landscape of the NFL, and you're rounding around training camps right now among some of the better teams in the NFL, how do you think others see the Eagles, and how do you see the Eagles compared to them?
Well, I mean, look, it's to sit there and say it's going to be tough to rebound. It is. I mean, that's a tough collapse, right? That's a tough thing for a lot of people to get over. You've seen what's happened to the Falcons, since that Super Bowl loss. But the thing is, the talent and the bar for the Eagles is much higher than a lot of other teams, and I do think in adding Fangio on defense, Kellen Moore on offense to coordinate things is going to help. Look, the talent is there. The toughness is there. To me, this is not, a top-to-bottom super tough division where every game is going to be a war. But the Eagles are going to get everybody's best shot. So it's going to be tough. You look around, the conference, the Niners are still going to be there. Detroit's going to be there. The Packers are going to be there. We'll see about the Cowboys. We'll see about some of these other teams, but I think Philadelphia's biggest concern has to be among themselves. Can they sustain? Can they play at a high level and compete at a high level for 17 games? We saw last year they couldn't. A lot of things fell apart. That's going to be their challenge, and I'm sure you guys are going to hold them accountable once they get to week 10 and 11. Like, okay, now's when you have to be playing your best football, not just hanging on to get to the postseason.
What's a realistic ceiling for Jalen Hurts this season?
Oh, man, why does he have to have a ceiling? I just think, realistically, we can sit here and say, okay, 4,200 yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns, but we just don't know how it's going to be used. And I think that's something that's going to be formulated as the season goes along. How do you incorporate Saquon? Instead of maybe doing the tush push, you get the ball to Saquon. I think the biggest thing is to protect the ball. Don't turn it over. Don't give the other team opportunities to score. And just to continue to excel as the dual threat that he is. I mean, statistically, that's what I'm saying. You can't put a ceiling on him, but I just think it comes down to wins and losses and making a deep playoff run in a conference that's not as tough as the AFC, but is very top-heavy in terms of being balanced with talent and great coaching.
You know that I can get a little over-analytical at times. My partners certainly know it here, Steve. But I'm looking at Kellen Moore, and I see the fact that he has not had great success at time of possession. His teams don't tend to – they end up – his average is 21 in his 5 years of calling plays. Should that be a concern?
No, because you have to look at all the other factors in a lot of this, right? When he was in Dallas, what's one thing that the Cowboys did better than almost every team in the NFL? They took the ball away. So a lot of times he's playing with short fields. So instead of saying they don't hold the ball for a long time, they might have scored a touchdown because they were starting from the opponent's 35. So you have to take all the factors into account. Again, look at how many takeaways the Cowboys would get every year and how many short fields that offense is playing with. We like to talk about how they were you could say it's a negative to some degree how they were the highest scoring offense. But a lot of it's because their defense is giving them great opportunities. But that's what Super Bowl type teams do. The Saints were always, when Drew Brees was there, always one of the top takeaway teams. The Packers with Aaron Rodgers were always one of the best takeaway teams. So, you have to factor all those into account. And when you talk about time of possession, that's part of it. But here's the other part, and this is where Saquon can add it. When he gets a time of possession, if you've got a lead going into the fourth quarter, just start pounding the ball. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And that's something that Kellen Moore, he did it some with Zeke down in Dallas, but for the most part, he didn't have a back, and they oftentimes didn't have a mentality to pound the ball and wear the clock down. And that's something that with this offensive line and a back like Saquon, he's going to have the opportunity to do.
We're speaking with Steve Wyche from the NFL Network, chief national reporter. You've been in locker rooms all over the NFL for years, Steve. So I want to ask this. How difficult is it to replace not just the player, but the voice of a Jason Kelce and a Fletcher Cox, two guys that have been here, that have been staples in Philadelphia for a decade now? Those two players are gone, both retired. How difficult is it to replace that?
It's not easy. It's not easy. But it also depends on the makeup of your locker room. If you have other guys, if you've got a Lane Johnson on an offensive line who people respect, or Jordan Mailata, or other types of leaders, then it's easier to do. Like I said, it's not easier, but the transition can change. Someone can step up. If you don't have a veteran locker room or strong personalities in the locker room, not loud guys, but strong personalities, then it's a difficult thing because some guys may have to step out of their comfort zone, and it's just not them. But this is where Jalen Hurts and some of these guys have to step up. I'm not big on having your coach be your number one leader. I think player accountability and setting the standard high in the locker room is a huge thing. But we see teams like Baltimore do it year after year where they lose, great leaders or really good coordinators, and they are able to just step right up because the bar overall is set high. So we'll see in Philadelphia. I just think they've got just so many other guys who can step in and do it, especially on the offensive side, not necessarily on the defensive side. But I just think the bar and the level of competition has been so good for such a nice stretch there that some guys will fill in the void.
We think 5 teams can go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. We did 5 teams this morning. I'm not going to give you the 5 teams. I bet you could name them, though. The question is, do you see the pool of teams that could potentially end up in New Orleans on Super Bowl Sunday being deeper than maybe we do?
That's a great question because I'm probably kind of with you. And, the 5 teams you're probably thinking of are, the Lions, the Niners, the Eagles, maybe the Packers.
One more.
Cowboys.
Yeah, that's it.
Ding, ding.
Yeah, there it is. You named our 5 just off the top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that in the AFC. The AFC, you're probably doubling that amount. In the NFC, is there a sleeper? I don't think we're talking enough about Seattle. Even then, I don't know if Seattle's a team that can get all the way through. So, yeah, I mean, again, that's why Philadelphia's not going to have a whole lot of excuses. Things absolutely change when we start playing during the season. But going in, they're absolutely one of the front runners.
Steve, last thing before we let you go, and we appreciate your time today. We've all kind of closed the book on last year, but this is my first chance getting to talk to you. So I will ask you, how important is it for this Eagles team to get off to a fast start, a hot start, to try to put everything last year aside?
I mean, I think that's a great point. but I think it's more important so they can work on getting home field. We know the NFC home field is a huge thing, and everybody really wants it there because most of the NFC teams are better and they're built to play on their home fields. But I think to get that taste out of their mouth is very huge. But I'm sure there's also going to be people like you guys reminding them about the collapse of last season.
Why would you suspect that we would do that? How well?
I mean, it's a hunch.
Hey, if you were listening to the show right now, we're trying to make people, Phillies fans, calm down. We're the beacons of hope right now, Steve.
We're calming people down about the Phillies, and we're optimistic about the Eagles, and people are telling us that we're too optimistic for Philadelphia.
Hey, man, it's always sunny in Philadelphia, right, guys?
Hey, Steve, look forward to talking to you again soon, buddy. Love you, man.
Appreciate you guys. Love you, man. Take
Thank
care.
you. There he is, Steve Wyche of the NFL Network.